The closing presentation of the day is going to be given by Dr. Brad Moran, Dean, College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, University of Alaska, Fairbanks. And it's going to be on the Sikuliag, I guess, a small boat, the ice-strengthened U.S. academic research vessel.
All right, end of the day. Thanks for sticking around. I know I'm between everyone here and the reception, so I'm going to make sure I'm on time. Thank you for this opportunity to come here and speak. It's an honor and a privilege to represent the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, as we are the operator of this vessel right here, the only ice-capable research vessel in the academic fleet, RV Sikuliag. I would say we're fiercely proud of our operation and looking forward to do so in the going forward with NSF. 2 years ago, there was an update on the vessel, and this is going to be another update since then. One, you'll note, and it's a real honor to see that Sikuliaq's on your program. So in the meantime, we painted the hull dark blue, among other updates. I won't make any assumptions. Some quick facts on Sikuliaq. It's a $200 million ice-capable global-class research vessel, 20 crew and 26 scientists. It's right now actually in Seward. That's the home port. It'll be there till the 29th of July. It was completed in 2014, and it actually only became fully operational last March 2016. So it's a little over a year that we've been fully operational. There have been some cruises in the meantime, of course. But that puts the University of Alaska Fairbanks and the college in the big league, I would say, of U.S. ship operators with UW, Woods Hole, Lamont, and Scripps. And, of course, it supports Alaskan and national international research. Since the last meeting 2 years ago, I just mentioned it's gone fully operational. I wanted to point out 4 updates I think that are important for folks to be aware of. One is the emphasis on compliance, which I'll talk about. The CECSOP is a Community Environmental Compliance Standard Operating Procedure. We work very closely with NSF on this document. We've had some technical modifications. We're certainly trying to get sound profile information, IT with the high seas net, and the SAT-NAG, which I'll touch on. Fisheries was engineered out of Sikuliaq when it was built. We're trying to put that back in. I'll touch on that. And then I'll mention the ARICE international collaboration that's pending right now out of AVI. We've heard a number of talks. Things are heating up in the Arctic in terms of either there was a lot of emphasis in oil drilling, etc., along the North Slope depicted here. That's gone away, but with that, there's a lot more interaction in other ways. We just heard a talk about cruise, for example. This is on the right-hand side here is the industry conflict avoidance agreement that's drawn up. There's a lot of information there, but I wanted to point out all those oil companies and the word "and" with all these Eskimo whaling commissions. So there was a conflict avoidance agreement drawn up by industry with these communities that is effectively off the table because Shell has pulled out. So when folks want to do their research operations, this is just a seasonal depiction of bowhead subsistence whaling up on the Alaskan North Slope area. There's the potential then for conflict with these communities that have been there for, as we've heard, many, many thousands of years. They have a lot of knowledge. So we want to ensure in our operations at Sikuliaq that we're compliant and working with these communities, and that's one thing we've made a strong emphasis. 1 year ago, this is a first for our university, first for any university, I think, that operates a ship. We put together a memorandum of understanding. We took that conflict avoidance agreement and worked it as the university MOU with, in this case, the Wainwright Whaling Captain Association. And sort of amazingly, our lawyers signed off on this and established trust with this community. And that's really quite an impressive thing. I can assure you there's no federal agency in this room that's going to walk down that path. What was at stake? There was probably 2 days before the final deadline to have this operation, our research operation. There was several $1 million in research alone at stake, so we really needed to make sure that this went through. So that was a big deal for the university, for working with NSF, and working particularly with this community. A lot of information here. This Sikuliaq Community Environmental Compliance Standard Operating Procedure. It's modeled after the Waterways Safety Committee Standard of Care document. It's been vetted through NSF. It's been vetted through all of these organizations shown here. Many different organizations, from Sea Grant to the Icebreaking, AICC, etc. This document's posted on our website. If you want to use the Sikuliaq, you will be compliant with this document. There are checklists. There's many steps in place to make sure that we work well with the whaling communities, the subsistence hunters. This is a very important aspect. Why does this matter to this community? Well, the more activity that's going on, the more interaction you're going to have with these communities, and the better it will be to work closely and productively with these communities, which is what we're trying to do. So I feel it's setting a standard, if you like, in that regard. One of the key questions that's asked very pointedly is you cannot tell the subsistence hunting community the sound profile of the ship, whether it's on the shelf or further out, and this is true, and that then you cannot answer whether you're going to interfere with bowhead whaling, for example. This plot here is just our first initial attempt to try to give a sense of the sound profile of Sikuliaq, shown with all these squiggly lines. In the interest of time, I'm going to step through this quickly. Our noise profiles, this is decibels versus frequency here along the horizontal axis, of ships going through Rotterdam, and not the Arctic Ocean, of course. But this is two plots of Sikuliaq to compare with what would normally be, or sort of an average, ship noise from vessels that will probably start going through the Arctic Ocean a lot more. And you can see at 12 knots, at low frequency, Sikuliaq is relatively quiet compared to these vessels. It's similar to the others at the higher frequencies. But at 4 knots, and of course when it's not running, it's a relatively quiet ship, and that's important to try to convey when you're having a discussion about whether or not the ship is going to interfere with subsistence hunting. Why is this? It has a number of technical modifications. The Z drives are very key to the quietness of Sikuliaq in its operation. I can talk more about that later, but I'm going to move on. Another aspect of Sikuliaq that's happened in the last couple of years is this collaboration between the other global class operators around IT. This is Scripps, Hui, UW, and UAF. Lamont's not on here. This is our IT guru, if you like, our chief, John Haverlack. They work very closely on improving satellite navigation, satellite communications between these vessels, and in fact now we have higher bandwidth with an NSF program, the High Seas Net, and so technical modifications around IT are a big part of what's been going on with the ship since we've gone fully operational. I'll just show one example of this. It was built by Steve Roberts in our Seward Marine Center group shoreside facility. This is effectively what's a GIS custom map server that you can overlay many different maps. I've just taken this one example where you have topography, you have ice information, which actually feeds into the Naval Ice Center. We provide that information. Many different ship tracks, etc. So there's an ability for the ship to have a multi-layer web-based GIS server. It's another feature of Sikuliaq that's quite advanced. I mentioned that the fisheries was engineered out for costs and other reasons. We're trying to put that back in. We just are under the process now of buying this surface and under ice trawl suit. It's made in the Alfred Wegener Institute. This is actually a cartoon of the Polarstern. It's not Sikuliaq. And it will allow us to sample down here meso and macrozooplankton, but also fish. So we're looking to expand the research capacity of Sikuliaq to address fisheries. There's a lot of support there from BOEM and other agencies in that regard. Quite excited about that. On the international scene, some of you may be aware of this. This is pending. It's not in the can yet. It's ARICE. It's a proposal, international effort run out of Alfred Wegener Institute, the Arctic Research Icebreaker Consortium. You can see here all the different icebreakers. I've highlighted Sikuliaq. This is their lifetime. There's some that are coming on, the Norwegians, the Attenborough, the UK, Polarstern 2. What this is a €6 million euro proposal that will improve networking and coordination between the various countries that have interest in doing work in the Arctic with ice-capable or icebreaker research vessels. So this will enhance that coordination, transnational access. If this proposal goes forward, and it sounds like it's very promising, there will be ability, if you're a U.S. scientist, a British scientist, what have you, to work across different nations and across different platforms as shown right here, Sikuliaq right here. This is really kind of cool because, you know, we now have Port Sikuliaq on an international platform, international collaboration that I know NSF is very supportive, and it actually would leverage resources in many different positive ways. As the Dean, I have to throw two slides up that show just the great work that our college is doing. This is actually a new project funded. It's a long-term ecosystem research program by NSF. They're very competitive. This is one of only two in the Arctic region. We're on both of them, and it will run for 5 years along this Seward line right here, but actually expand out to other areas. And the emphasis is on basically understanding better the role of potential climate change on lower trophic and higher trophic fisheries going forward. Very excited about the LTER. Sikuliaq will be the vessel that will presumably, for the most part, be operating in this regard. And this expedition literally just ended. It's a collaboration with, among others, the North Pacific Research Board, the Asgard Arctic Shelf Growth Reduction, Respiration, and Deposition Rate Measurement Program. It's a mouthful. You can see where we're operating. This was largely run out of our college. You may have seen in the news a few weeks ago there was Sikuliaq was involved in a search and rescue off Wales. It was not successful, unfortunately. Coast Guard was engaged in that as well. So that was another sort of opportunity for Sikuliaq to work in different ways. The Senator King, for those that were here this morning, said they really like to have, you know, visualization of data. Well, we're really big on social media, I can assure you. So we're on Twitter. It's sort of odd to say that word when I'm in Washington, D.C. But we are. We have Instagram, our Sikuliaq Instagram. We're on Facebook. I encourage you to jump on this and check out a lot of the cool stuff that's going on with our college, and particularly with the ship. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brad. You're right on time.
I tend to be that way.
Very good. Any questions for Brad Moran?
Everybody's thirsty.
Let me start with an online question for you. What enforcement options exist in the newly agreed upon standard operating procedures? If the newly agreed upon standard operating procedures are violated?
I'm not sure I understand the question, to be honest.
I'm not sure I understand it.
This is a voluntary effort. There's no enforcement. This is working in a voluntary way to try.
We're going to request that the person that posed the question.
I actually had a question that I wanted to put to this group. So if you want to use our vessel, the one that we operate, owned by National Science Foundation, it's about $50,000 a day. How much does it cost if you want to use Healy? And why? Anybody have the answer to that question? Coast Guard here? Right. So we have two major federal assets. Does it really cost $30,000 a day to run Healy? Got to get that sorted out.
Well, of course, Aaron's small boats are free and come with food. So
certainly, Sikuliaq claims to have the best food in the fleet. I'm not sure.
Any other questions?
There's one over there in the back.
Yeah, there's a couple there.
Yes, thank you. This is really fascinating. The gentleman from Barrow spoke about the importance of historic and native knowledge of the area. What aspects is the University of Alaska and the Sikuliaq doing to perhaps coordinate and offer STEM opportunities for young native Inuit, Alaskan, Aleut peoples to train on board this vessel, and also so we could get a merge and a holistic approach towards both technology and as well as historic and native knowledge?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. I mean, I do feel that, or we do feel that our position being in Alaska running this vessel gives us a definite advantage to work with the many different indigenous communities. Just to back up for a second, our college is in 12 locations, so we have what we call a Marine Advisory Program all over the place, particularly in Nome. We work very closely there. Gay Sheffield is in Nome. So there's that level of engagement, generally speaking. The state of Alaska invests $500,000 a year in this, what we call the Alaska Sikuliaq program, and that is been used mostly to have ship days paid for, but we try to engage as much as we can with the Native communities. I think what you're saying, though, is there's a great opportunity, and we want to take advantage of that. When we run the ship, we have an observer. When we had the search and rescue, there was a Native observer on the vessel. So the more we can do in that regard, the better. So we feel like we're in a very good position because of having our foothold in Alaska, I feel like.
There was another question. Just
I can hear you.
No,
Yeah. I can
we
repeat
want
the
the
question,
people
too.
online to hear you. Okay.
I have a question about research in the winter in the Arctic. There's more and more research coming out now that that's starting to become very important to understand how the Arctic rejuvenates and regenerates in the winter months. I mean, if you have a vessel like yours, is there any plans to start looking into doing research in the wintertime and just go with it for a couple of months?
You know, I'm so glad you asked that question because I was going to bring it up at the very beginning. So this is an ice-diminished Arctic symposium on naval and maritime operations. We have a fleet of 1.5 icebreakers. This is ice-capable. So if things keep going the way they are with the global warming, et cetera, we would be the benefactor as the operator of Sikuliaq because this vessel will go through 2.5 feet of ice at 2.5 knots. So with less and less ice, we would actually be out more and more of the season. So from an operator perspective, that's a plus. And to address your specific question, we'd be out there more in sort of the winter seasons. That's with regard to using Sikuliaq, which I presume you're referring to directly, yeah. So one consequence of an ice-diminished Arctic is that do we really need as many icebreakers, perhaps? You know, the ice-capable Sikuliaq might be the way to go.
There's another online question. Does Sikuliaq follow UNOLS R2R procedures? For example, collecting multi-beam while transmitting.
Best of my knowledge. Did Larry Mayer send that to me? To the best of my knowledge.
His name is Anonymous.
Yeah, I think Larry's testing me. Yes, we run all UNOLS.
Any other questions? Thank you, Brad.
Yeah.